Yeah, I think in order for Izzy, for you to understand what I think of a Palestinian diaspora, I need to first compare it to the Israeli diaspora, the one that lived outside of Israel for 2,000 years until the establishment of the Israeli state. And so, bottom line, we see ourselves as Jews, people that were sent in exile and forced to assimilate into the cultures and lands and peoples that we were at. We were still Jews in the sense that this was our religion, not always the case, but we did our best to be part of a greater society, even that if it wasn't ours. By the way, I'm really sorry. I'm just super excited. Still have butterflies in my stomach.
All good.
Um, and when we see the Palestinian diaspora, when I see it personally, I see a group of people, or I saw a group of people, I'd like to say, that were against assimilating into different countries that Israeli sees as part of a greater Arab nation, and basically bringing chaos into those states. So if I were to take the case of the Palestinian exodus to Lebanon, right? The PLO in the late 60s, in 1968, if I'm not mistaken, started carrying attacks and militarizing itself within the Lebanese state, which was already a very fragile state due to its sectarianism. Then we have the case in Jordan that the PLO also went into Jordan and started creating attacks against Israel into the state, including hijacking airplanes. And in Kuwait, we see in the 90s that there's this mass exodus, right? There was 400,000 Palestinians, if anyone's watching, fact check, in Kuwait before the exodus. And also they brought chaos, problems, and I'm using air quotes because I see it differently now, but for all intents and purposes. So we're just like, or I was just like, okay, these people obviously don't want to be part of their greater nation. They bring trouble. And the people who are basically, in a sense, taking ownership, right, of the Palestinian struggle has been at large Arabized by the greater Arab nation. Everyone is fighting for the Palestinian cause. And so for those to fight for the Palestinian cause and not even want to assimilate these Palestinians, these Arabs, yes, into their state, so why should we? And I think that it's a common misperception that many Israelis have.
I see.
Thank you, Danielle. So, Izzy, I'd like to ask you the same question: what your perception of Israelis currently is?
So when we talk about Israelis, I think about a group of people who moved into the land where other people lived, and they excluded those people by power and by terror as well. And there's a continued oppression from that group of people towards the Palestinians. And that oppression, while it is by the state system, my perception is that it is condoned by Israelis. And it's this constant exclusion of the other. This is my constant perception of Israelis living in Israel proper specifically, that they do not accept, and they will not accept anyone other than the Jewish population. Although there is legitimate claim for the people that lived in that land to that land. So that's been my perception. And also, given that I lived in diaspora, I I constantly watched what was happening in the West Bank and Gaza from afar. And it was, I always associated Israelis with the army, the military presence in the West Bank and later Gaza. I always associated the Israeli presence with the military presence. So in my mind, it's always about military and arms and weapons and war and issues like this. So that's basically my perception. It is, as I said, a group of people who came into the land and created an exclusivist space for them that resulted in the expulsion of my father and my mother and my family on both sides.
Just a shout out to EMs. PLO is not the Palestinian refugees, two different things. You are extremely correct. I just wanted to start off with what my common misconception was in the past and how this misconception is carried with many people today. Many don't distinct between the two. The PLO is also irrelevant to today. So thank you for clarifying and letting me speak on that.